Congratulations to all award winners and thank you so much for coming. Next, we'll move to our next section, our keynote speech session 1. Once again, let's give a very big welcome, applause to our Professor Mona Mohansika to come on stage and start our first session of the keynote speech. Thank you.
I'm born. Greetings from Sri Lanka. It's a great honor and privilege, distinguished guests, and thank you particularly to the hosts of this conference who have invited me. I'm just pressing the button. There we go. This is a special occasion because I've been saying for many years, business is not part of the problem, it is part of the solution. It's very heartening to see this, that we have in fact many problems in the 21st century, but we also have integrated solutions. And I will describe to you something called a balanced inclusive green growth path to sustainability. There is tremendous global momentum, and there is no excuse for delay. I think sustainability indicators in the business community must be pivotal. Just as a recent example, the last 2 conferences I have been to, in July, I was with President Obama in Portugal, where we launched the protocol. There were 3,500 top business executives in that hall, and they all signed the protocol saying they will do something about climate change, even though some of their governments were not doing it. So that is the kind of activism we need. I give you another example. Just in August, I prepared for the President of Sri Lanka a report called Sustainable Sri Lanka Vision and Strategic Plan. This is a government report for 2030, the vision. And our President himself promised to implement this report. I'm very happy to tell you that Sri Lanka is among the first countries in the world to produce such a report in keeping with the UN 2030 agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are listed at the bottom. Now let us move to the main topic of the day, a little bit about education for sustainable development in the 21st century. I have put down some of my own ideas. I'm not an expert, but I think first, transdisciplinary solutions are necessary because the problems with sustainability are very complex. We cannot think in terms of our boxes and our societies. We need new teaching methods. Certainly, digital technologies will be very important, whether it's distance learning or using smart technologies, maybe even getting artificial intelligence to assist in the learning process. Not to get rid of living teachers, but these are all things we should consider. We need, of course, more funding. That's education is not receiving enough percentage of GDP in countries, but it must be applied effectively, not wasted. And there is even a Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which identifies out of the 17 how important education is. I am also promoting the idea of what I call the Virtuversity, which is a kind of virtual university. This is a kind of a networking approach to teaching, so that a classroom, which is an old-fashioned concept, is no longer a class in a single building with a single group of students. The virtual university and the digital technology will allow us to multiply and reach many more people and to be much more interactive. So that leads us to the need to adapt to rapid changes in the stock of knowledge, because the stock of knowledge is sort of changing every few years. And we have somehow to have the concept of education as a continuous process, and also teaching much more students to think rather than memorize certain bits of knowledge which are changing all the time. And anyway, you can Google or you can tap the internet and get all the knowledge you want. What is lacking is the skill in the analysis and thinking. And of course, last but not least, balancing the cognitive and the non-cognitive. Because if you are creating a class of nerds who do not indulge in physical activity and other things, healthy mental framework and good health, emotional stability, then this is not a successful educational process. Talk about ethics a little bit, which is the other main topic. I mean, I'm not an expert ethicist, but there are certain guidelines which are good for any aspect of decision making, whether it's government or business, that you have to be more selfless, not so selfish. You have to have a respect for nature, honesty, integrity, trust, loyalty, fairness, all of these, obedience to the law, pursuit of excellence, extremely important, which we teach students, leadership, accountability, and so on. Somehow we must make these words come alive much more than before as we teach students subject matter. Now, let us get down to how we apply this process. For me, I teach a class in multidisciplinary analysis. First is analyzing the problem. What are the problems of sustainability? Poverty and inequality, resource shortages, energy, water, food. Problems in the financial sector, shocks and disasters, conflicts, weak leadership. I'm afraid at the top leadership in the world, people are much more concerned with the next election and not necessarily with the long-term future of the planet. And of course, unsustainable values, which we'll talk about, lack of ethics, values, and climate change, which is the ultimate threat multiplier, which will make all the other problems worse. Right? So these problems could lead to a global breakdown if we neglect them. Now, if we look at the bottom, and what we notice are these problems are synergistic. They interact in a bad way. But unfortunately, as stakeholders, 7 billion people on this planet, we are not united and we do not put forward integrated solutions. So there is no coordination and there is lack of political will. So the education system must train students to develop robust integrated strategies, transdisciplinary methods, and risk management and so on. These are growing more important in a very complex world. If you look at one of the problems, poverty and inequality, it's growing still. If you look at 1 in every 9 people in the world are still malnourished and hungry, it is scandalous. It's unacceptable. If you look at resource shortages, this is a very complex diagram, but in short, there are 9 resources which are very critical for the sustainability of the planet. Out of them, 4 are in the red or yellow area, which means we are overusing. 4 out of 9, almost 50%. If we put all these things together, let me give you an idea of how they combine. Okay? There is a concept called ecological footprint of humanity, okay, which is kind of a way of adding up all the resources we need to maintain 7 billion people on this planet. Now, if you looked in 2012, we needed 50% more than the sustainable capacity of the planet to sustain our lifestyle. By 2030, with current trends, we will need 2 planets. That's 100% more than we have of sustainable capacity. Okay. And this is, as a business model, it's not sustainable. It's drawing down your capital and running a constant capital account deficit. So you can't do this. Now, if you ask the question, who is doing this consumption, you will see that the top 20 percentile of the world's population are consuming 85% of the resources. So just imagine that the 8 richest people in 2016 own more wealth than half the world's population. 80%. Inequality. Now if you put those together, you see what is written on the bottom panel. And what does it say? It says, if the rich already use more than one planet, where are the resources to help the poor out of poverty? And that is why for 70 years, since the formation of the UN and the UN Declaration of Human Rights, we have had many promises, no delivery. And today, the Sustainable Development Goals are exactly the 17 what was originally in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. You don't have to go reinvent stuff, it's already there. So this is a very sad story. We have to break out of this cycle, and the Sustainable Development Goals are really one of the last chances we have to do this. So we are doing this in a world where wealth and income inequalities are growing. You may have read that there is an economist called Thomas Piketty who believes that part of this is inherently built into the capitalist system, which is driving inequality. But wealth, salaries everywhere, inequality is growing. This is unfortunate. Governments also tend to help the elites. Okay? If there is a crash, the rich are looked after first, and then the poor who are out of jobs later. And of course you have wars and disasters. Most of the wars now are being fought over resources. But you have also refugees and asylum seekers. 65 million in the last year. That's huge. That's bigger than a medium-sized country. The asset crisis of 2008. I'm sad to say, although I'm part of the economics community, that I don't think the financial sector has learned much from the past history 10 years ago. So we need more ethical principles, because probably we could face another catastrophe like the 2008 meltdown if we continue as we are. And I congratulate the speaker from the banking community who spoke so eloquently on his sector. I wish we had more like you, sir, in the world today. Now, here is a little bit of politics. We have to understand it is a backdrop. We are also moving from a unipolar to a multipolar world. This is part of the process. It is not whether I am promoting it or not, it is happening already. We have moved from a bipolar world to unipolar world, which was more US dominated, G7 and the US dollar. Now it's multipolar. Okay, we are looking for more other centers like the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, non-aligned movement, the European Union, and so on. We have the old systems, the World Bank and IMF and the Bretton Woods institutions, now supplemented by other institutions like AIIB and so on. So we have to live in this world. I think this is also going to add to the complexity, but it must be factored in, because implementation of sustainability theory requires that we understand the political matrix in which all of this is buried. And finally, I mentioned to you climate change. We have a huge report. I've been working on climate change issues for more than 20 years. You don't have to read the whole report. The two most important facts for this is the bottom two, that poor countries and the poor people will suffer most, which is manifestly unfair, because they are the ones who have the least to do with creating them. But there is also a more hopeful side, that if we work on sustainable development issues more broadly, we can also solve climate change at the same time. So we do not solve each problem by itself, but we have integrated solutions that will look after poverty, hunger, health, and all of these problems together. And we have the knowledge to do it. It is just that we lack the implementation. Why is that? Because we have not learned the lessons from the past. This is something that we really, instead of inventing new solutions, we will look a little bit in the past and see what other mistakes we have made. See, this is the way I envision schematically the way the world works. You start with the base of our biogeophysical resources, the air, the water, and so on. On that are various productive economic assets, which you call capital, labor, and this and that. They are producing goods and services which drive economic growth, measured by GNP, and of course what is in the markets, the stock market, and so on. And normally these levels should be locked together, well integrated. Right? So your head can be in the clouds, you become a millionaire, your feet must be firmly on the ground. But what is happening is that there is a disconnect. First, we are all looking at the stock market, but we forget that there is an asset. As soon as the value, true value of economic assets and the financial value gets disconnected because of, let us say, very complex derivatives and other instruments, and then we will have potential disasters happening in 2008. Economic growth. One of the speakers mentioned GNP. We are measuring in terms of aggregate consumption, but it does not look at the distribution of these productions. As economists, we have known this for many years. Right? Perfect competition does not care who is consuming, as long as overall consumption grows. So there is another bubble. There are almost 2 billion poor people in the world. This is a very uncomfortable bubble. We don't want it to get out of hand. And that is the social bubble. And then the last one, the environmental bubble. We are completely divorced from nature because this is the use now, pay later syndrome. That we are using the resources, our children and grandchildren will pay. So a few could get rich, but other people will pay the price. And this is not what we want. Now if we look at the decision making, how have we deployed resources? I mean, government bailouts initially for 2008. I mean, $10 trillion was thrown in, mainly to help banks and other institutions to survive. 100 billion, which is 1/100th of that amount, is given for aid, okay, to help the poor, and a few $1 billion for climate change and other environmental resources. So world military expenses, $2 trillion. And so the question is, with this deployment of resources, can we solve these problems? Are these the priorities we want? Also learning from history, we have to understand what has happened in the long ago past. The collapse of past civilizations, whether you look at the Han civilization in China, you have in India, ancient civilizations in Mohammedan and so on, Mesopotamia and so on. Millennia, they've lasted not 10 years, 100 years, but thousands of years. But eventually, two factors. One is pressure on environmental resources. The second one is some social stratification, inequalities, elites versus society. These all cause the downfall of these civilizations. And this is what we have to be really careful about as we go forward. Even in the 19th century, you look at China, India, and Brazil had the same, almost the same quality of life as Europe. But shortly after, by the time we came to the 20th century, Europe and the Americas went ahead. Part of it was environmental and sustainability, because there were some El Nino droughts in that period, in the 19th century, which combined with the world trade, that the China, India, and so on were producing cash crops under the colonial system for the Western countries. And with the droughts and the collapse of their food producing, tens of millions of people died in those countries. And they never really recovered within the world order. So if you look at some of the environmental factors that are driving the development of nations, you will see that environment and social order have played an important role. What we want to do is we want to avoid barbarization, which is a risky scenario. We have unrestrained market forces without ethical and moral principles, various problems like poverty, inequality, and so on, environmental problems, climate change. We can lead to chaos and breakdown. A fortress world where you have elites and poor in opposition, and even some of the features of George Orwell's 1984 book, which is police state and so on. We don't want to get to that point. We want to go to a more sustainable one. So the third step really is to define a vision. What does the Earth eco-civilization of the 21st century look like? I would say happiness and well-being. I'm working, for example, with the government of Bhutan to supplement GNP, which is consumption-based, with other notions of happiness. We all know that we are happy, of course, if we consume more, but there are other factors, family and so on, emotional health and so on, which are important. So we have to focus on those aspects of well-being. We want to build a prosperous and resource-efficient economy because we need economic growth to bring the poor out of poverty, but we must meet environmental and social goals. So we must meet the basic needs of the poor and environmentally live within the sustainable capacity of the earth. This is extremely important. And this is where the UN 2030 agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals come. As I said, number 4, good education is a very important goal, 1 out of 70. Now, I'm going to skip this and move to the step 4, which is really coming a little bit to the solutions. What to teach in the 21st century? In 1992, I proposed a framework called Sustainomics and this balanced, inclusive green growth path. At the time, some people didn't understand it, many people were opposed. They said it's so complicated. But now, in retrospect, many accept this kind of thinking. The first core concept is really empowerment. Sustainable development is like a mountain. Peak is covered with clouds. Many people, including myself, don't know exactly where it is. But you keep climbing up there. Okay, when you leave this room, you switch off the light, turn off a tap, you plant a tree. So, many of the things that we do are sustainable. We can make the change. We don't need world leaders to tell us what to do. That is a big mistake that people are making. They are waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. It can be done. So empowerment is very important. That is why EDUI and EDUA will succeed because they epitomize this approach. Corporate social responsibility and in the business sector. So beyond individuals, in groups, companies, if we practice CSR and CSR plus, which is going beyond sustainability, triple bottom line approach to reporting and information analysis. So concept of shared value, impact investment, and many concepts which are being developed. And you are experts on that, there will be others speaking on that topic. But I want to mention that this is part of the wave of the future, how the business community will become part of the solution. The second core concept really is the concept of the triangle, which I proposed in 1992. Everybody hated it. The economists didn't like it, the environmentalists didn't like it, and the social people didn't, because they didn't want to work together. But now we know that we need all three elements to solve the problem. Any problem right in the middle of the triangle can be solved in terms of these three elements, but they must be in balance. It is also a Chinese concept of harmony. We need harmony in order to solve our problems. We cannot solve it by internal conflicts. And if you look at the different types of capital, you have built capital for the economy, you have environmental, natural capital for the environment, you have social capital, human beings and cultural values that glue that bind society together. Very important, people don't recognize social capital as part of the productive process. And this is where ethics and values come in. That is why we neglect that. And that is part of the teaching. We don't necessarily teach only for construction engineers, for built capital or environmentalists to protect nature. We have to also teach them about social values. The third core concept is within our minds, and this is you recognize as educators. Basically, if you want people to have fresh ideas and innovation, you have to replace some of the old values which are very unsustainable and unethical. We have to think in terms of transdisciplinary, many disciplines. Why? Because problems are complex, they are not confined to physics or mathematics or engineering or law or medicine, it's all of the above. It is really a little bit unfair because, I mean, when I was a student, my supervisor said, your subject, which happened to be physics, you have to be the world's leading expert in this area, know more about this than anybody else. And then you will get your PhD. So it's very narrow. So now we are asking students, yes, you have to be the world's leading expert, but by the way, you know, you also have to be broad. You have to know about all these other subjects in order to think multidisciplinary. So we are demanding more of them, but it is a more demanding world. We have to do that. We have to think in terms of time spans which are hundreds of years, really space, the whole planet, and multi-stakeholder approaches. For example, that it is not only government who solves problems, but also business and civil society have to push the governments to do the right thing. Otherwise, you will not get the right solutions. But in particular, replacing unsustainable values is a very important point. And just to stress this particular point, let me just talk to you about how unethical social values are currently very too important in the world. That is driving us in the wrong direction. Okay? And that has led to what I call an economic model of maldevelopment, not development. It is based much more on debt and inequality and so on. So if you look, our grandparents saved very much more than we do. And their saving and their investment has helped us to live well. But we have learned another truth. We, instead of saving, we are borrowing. And we are borrowing from our grandchildren. So our lifestyle is very good. But what is left for the grandchildren? Right? Environmental debt and climate change and all the other problems. So the less resources you have in the future, the more conflicts. So the social structure also becomes extremely unsustainable. So you have a bad cycle, and the sustainable development space in the middle, it has shrunk. Okay? So the last point I want to make is transdisciplinary thinking, that to solve the diverse problems of sustainable development on the left side, you need all of the disciplines on the right side, but they must be combined. And this is the kind of thinking we have to encourage in our students. That is what Sustainomics does. And of course, the business working with civil society and to support government. And the final step is really implementation. Because as academics, we tend to theorize, we write papers, but who implements? We need to implement many of the plans which are sitting on shelves. This is not done. We need to have practical people. Now, I'm going to tell you a brief thing about the balanced inclusive green growth path and end there. One of the lessons of history is that when I proposed this triangle, we tried first to integrate the three aspects, and we found we couldn't do it. Okay? It was like an unhappy love triangle, two guys chasing one girl, all of them very unhappy. Okay? So what we did is, in the 1990s, after the Rio Earth Summit, we said, let's start with economy and environment. Okay, this is the green growth model. And we found that this was good. This was fine. We could make that work together. And of course, the social was much more uncovered, but separate, right? And then, after we have come to 2015, we bring in the social. So, green growth is economy and environment. Inclusive green growth is social, economic, and environment. All three. This is the stage we are in. Okay, today. And how does this work in actual practice? This is the path. If you plot here the vertical axis, let's say the environmental dimension, and the horizontal axis is economy, which is like GNP. You see, if you're poor, in a poor country, you're at point A. So you have low GDP, but you also have low environmental problems. If you are a rich country, you are at point C. You are rich, but you also are emitting, in this case, climate greenhouse gas emissions above the safe limit. Right? So many countries like Sri Lanka and Taiwan are maybe in the middle. So, but there is no harmony. In this world, in this model, there is no harmony. So first, we have to do the green growth part. Green growth, which is, in fact, for example, Korea is following this, and to some extent Japan, I think also Taiwan, that they have to transform their economies or dematerialize. So basically what we're saying is you don't have to get poor to be green. You have the technologies so that you can have the same quality of life, you can improve your output, but you use less resources. So you come down on the environment. But that is not enough. There are all the countries in the middle at point B. They cannot follow the same wasteful, the profligate curve of the rich countries because there are not enough resources for 7 billion people on the planet to live like the North Americans. It's not enough resources. But we have a different path. This is called the green growth tunnel, which is resource efficient. It can reach the same end point, okay, but with much less use of resources. And of course, this is still green growth. We need inclusive green growth. So you want to find a green growth path which is also inclusive. It is pro-poor. Without that, you do not have the social life. So that third element has to be brought in. That is the balanced inclusive green growth path. And just to finish up, I have applied these models in many countries. For example, integrating this process into macroeconomic modeling. Now, a lot of people in the treasury and other things in the government are very uncomfortable because they don't want to, they're mainly economists, they don't want to bring in social and environmental factors. But we have, for example, computable general equilibrium models which I have developed, which integrate all of these dimensions, right? And we can also think of sustainable consumption as one of the outcomes. That if you look at the top, this is a rich family, they are living well, they can have the same lifestyle but with less packaging and other things, they have less waste. And food waste in the rich world is very high, 50% in the US, 30% in Europe. That can be reduced so that you can deploy more resources for the poor who are starving. So that is how you bring the poor family at the bottom out of poverty. Okay? So you have to balance resources in order to do that. But it does not mean that the rich have to become poor. The rich have to become much more efficient, much more sustainable in their consumption. And there are also unconventional methods. Education is not just in universities. I formed the Organization for Sustainable Musica in 2012 at the Earth Summit after Rio Plus 20 with some street musicians. This is the music of sustainability. Why? Because this audience is only 0.001% of the world. But there are millions of young people who are going to rock concerts and other things. We can reach them through this kind. We can appeal to other ways, through the heart. Right? These are, and of course, last but not least is sustainable production, where I've talked to some of the top CEOs and boards of these huge multinational companies in almost every sector: chemicals, retail, energy, plantation, mining, and so on, biotech. All of them recognize that sustainability and triple bottom line is the wave of the future, but they also find that resource use efficiency, that is the green approach, is very appealing. Why? Because when you're resource efficient, your costs are less, so your profits are more, but also you are environmentally good. Okay, so this is a good combination. It's a good way to start the sustainability process. I will skip this part because, and just end with this. We need also public education because we want sustainable consumers and sustainable producers to support each other, right? So that people buy sustainable products. Right? And eventually, if that sustainability culture spreads throughout the economy, then you have a sustainable society. But that requires also public education, and that is a very important aspect. I think China has a very important role, including Taiwan, of course, but it's an emerging nation. We need, I think, at the bottom here, connect south, north, and east, west. Taiwan is in a good position to do that, but it must be ethical and sustainable. But last but not least, to survive in a dynamic world, watch out for surprises. Because there are economic crises, there are environmental crises, there can be conflicts, technological disruption. If you look at artificial intelligence, robotics, or the digital economy, there are a lot of surprises. And of course, climate change. And let me also tell you that one thing I have learned personally is it's important to harmonize yourself before you try to harmonize the planet. Okay? You have your work, which is the mind, right? And your income. You have your health and your fitness. If you only do work and you neglect your health, it's not a good thing. And you have the social sector. Family and friends should not be neglected either. If you work together, then you have a well-balanced person, mind and body, right? This is extremely important to remember at the end of the day. So finally, I'm telling you, there are many problems in the world. We know how to solve them. If we start now, you are empowered to do that. And I think EDUA, EDUI, and NTP can be the leaders of this 21st century revolution. This is the ancient blessing from Sri Lanka, which says, may the rains come in time. Environment, may the harvest be bountiful, which is economy. May the people be happy and contented. Society, may the king be righteous, which is governance. So many hundreds of years ago, my ancestors in Sri Lanka knew all about the sustainability rules. We are just trying to rediscover them. Thank you very much.
Appreciation to give it to you. 我想再次邀请到简佑新简先生为我们颁发我们的感谢状给我们的 Keynote Speaker。那我们再次掌声鼓励欢迎。谢谢。Thank you.
I received so many awards that it's like I'm graduating from this university. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. Now it's our group time. It's time for our group photo. So 我现在邀请 前两排的贵宾上台跟我一起拍大合照。Now I'm inviting our distinguished from the first two lines to come up stage and take a group photo. Thank you. 现在邀请。